those fallen angels had sex with the daughters of men, and they created the super race of people known as the Nephilim.
Who were the giants of the Old Testament? The dreaded Nephilim, whose dark presence loomed over the ancient world. Descendants of enigmatic origin. Their ominous reputation stains the pages of history with tales of malevolence and turmoil.
Genesis 6 says that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and they chose the daughters of men for themselves as wives, and they married them. So the question is, who are the sons of God that are marrying the daughters of men?
Were they the righteous descendants of Seth, maintaining fidelity to divine, who intermingled with the descendants of Cain, thereby triggering divine wrath? Could they have been ancient rulers who claimed divine status? Or does the enigmatic narrative point to a more ethereal origin, suggesting that these sons of God were in fact fallen angels, descending from heavenly realms to mingle with the daughters of men, thus sparking a cosmic cataclysm of divine proportions?
There are only 5 occurrences in the entire Bible where we have the exact expression, Son of God or sons of God, and it always refers to angelic beings.
The narrative of fallen angels engaging in illicit relationships with human women is presented as a pivotal event in the pre-flood world. These angels are depicted as rebellious celestial beings who defy the divine order by descending to earth and lusting after mortal women. This forbidden union between beings of different orders, angelic and human, is portrayed as an act of cosmic rebellion and transgression.
And if you look in the Greek text of 2 Peter, it's very clear that there are 2 examples. So if God did not spare the angels who sinned, and he delivered Noah, so when Peter is talking about the angels who sinned, he's very clearly talking about Genesis chapter 6, because this is connected with the story of Noah.
In the exploration of ancient texts, we encounter a perplexing narrative that prompts profound theological inquiry. How do we reconcile the concept of celestial beings, traditionally understood as incorporeal entities engaging in physical relations with mortal women?
I truly am again, not 100% sure, but leaning heavily towards the possibility that angels are exclusively male.
There's no indication anywhere in Scripture, at least no clear indication anywhere in Scripture, that angels could be described as feminine.
Gabriel, speaking to Mary, or 3 angels, one of them being the angel of the Lord himself, but then accompanied with 2 other angels meeting with Abraham. And in all these instances, not visions, but actual physical appearances of angels as historical narrative in the script, they're exclusively male.
I would agree with you. Whenever we do see angels in Scripture, whenever the gender is referenced at all, it's always male.
Now, the question is, okay, so if angels are male, the next thing is, though, but how does one male species mate with another female species? Angels, I don't think there's any reason to think that angels are pure spirit in heaven, and then whenever there's an angelic appearance on earth, it's actually just a purely spiritual entity without a body projecting a hologram or an apparition that looks physical. I don't think that's it. I think it's a physical being, just like human beings. We have both spirit and body. Spirit and body. I think angels likewise are spirit and body, a spirit with a physical locale of the body. And when they come to earth, they're coming in both spirit and body. They actually are appearing in flesh, in their body, and golly gee, what does that body look like? A lot like ours, to the point where even, the inhabitants of Sodom, could notice, hey, there's something different about them. Like, so in their lust and perversion, they were desirable, these angels, but they also weren't sitting there and saying, what's this crazy monster in town that looks nothing like a human being at all? It was like, no, they stand out, but also they look like people.
Pastor Alan Nolan provides additional insight into this matter by elucidating the underlying rationale behind the notion that fallen angels were capable of engaging in sexual relations with human females.
Angels are not disembodied spirits. Angels have a celestial body, and they can also manifest themselves at times in a terrestrial body. In other words, a physical body. Even God has told us in the book of Hebrews that we ought to entertain strangers, because many of you had entertained strangers and they were actually angels and you were unaware of that. The book of Jude and 2 Peter tells us that the fallen angels who left their natural habitation and had sex with the daughters of men are being kept in chains until the day of judgment. Jude talks further about this. Look at Jude chapter 1, verse 6. Notice what it says. And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation. Where have you heard that word before? Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. Why did these sons of God, these fallen angels, leave their natural habitation? In order to have sex with the daughters of men. So that's what he's referring to. You actually have two groups of fallen angels. You have those that are bound in chains, and you have those that are free. Those that are bound in chains are the ones that left their natural habitation and had sex with human women. Those that are free rebelled with Satan, but they didn't leave their natural habitation.
Angels certainly are spirit and physical. They have bodies. So we think they definitely have bodies, and probably male bodies, and perhaps exclusively male bodies, and that those angels, as creatures created in the image of God, like man, are different, but not so different from us that male physical angels could not mate with female physical humans, and they don't do that in heaven, but it doesn't mean that they can't do that, especially if they're rebelling against God's will on earth.
In the realm of biblical scholarship and ancient literature, there exists a fascinating topic that piques the curiosity of many, the Book of Enoch. This ancient text, though not included in the canonical scriptures of the Bible, holds a significant place in the study of early Jewish and Christian traditions. For those intrigued by this mysterious text, delving into the Book of Enoch opens a door to explore and the enduring quest for spiritual understanding.
Well, sometime around the year 200 BC, a Jewish document called the Book of Enoch, or as scholars call it, First Enoch, was produced. It gives all the details of how angelic beings copulated, had sexual intercourse with human women, and created a cosmic mess before the flood. And here is an interesting problem that we have. St. Jude, one of the 12 apostles, wrote a book of the New Testament. It's called the Epistle of St. Jude. And it directly quotes from the non-biblical document known as the Book of Enoch, or First Enoch. But it's not only this direct quotation of the Book of Enoch by St. Jude, but Jude and also St. Peter, one of the apostles, in his book 2 Peter, alludes to the fantastical events of the Book of Enoch, namely the sexual encounters of fallen angels with human wicked women, who then subsequently give birth to the Nephilim, or giants. The birth of the giants, according to the Book of Enoch, is the reason for Noah's flood. It's the reason God floods the entire earth and saves Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives.
These angels taught these women charms and enchantments, magic. But when these women became pregnant, they bore the great giants.
The resulting children are called Nephilim in Hebrew, or gigantes, giants, in Latin and in Greek. The giants, we learn in these documents, were warriors, cannibals.
There's one story in the Old Testament that people find difficult to reconcile, where God seems to have told his followers to annihilate entire people groups in Canaan. But a few rarely discussed verses change the entire meaning of that story. Who or what was living in Canaan when God told the Israelites to annihilate these towns? When my angel goes before you and brings you to the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, and I blot them out. You shall not bow down to their gods nor serve them, and nor do as they do, but you shall utterly overthrow them and break their pillars in pieces. Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 11, which mentions an Amorite king that the Israelites battled. His name was King Og, and he had a 13.5-foot long iron bed. The next verse that comes up is Amos chapter 2, verse 9, and it says this: Yet it was I who destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of cedars, and who was strong as the oaks. I destroyed his fruit above and his roots below. A king as tall as cedars. That description sounds very similar to Goliath. Deuteronomy 3 verse 11 says Og was the last of the Rephaim. The Rephaim were also unusually tall.
The existence of giants in the Old Testament is just sort of almost casually like, oh yeah, and then there were some giants that they had to fight, and it was pretty metal, but then God, cut their heads off, and now there's no more of them. Like, it just acts like that's to me, how casually it references it demonstrates how widespread this knowledge was in the ancient world, that, oh yeah, there were giants, like, all over the place.
The Nephilim were part of the reason he sent the flood in the first place. That's why. It was necessary. Here, the same threat has emerged again, trying to stop God from having a human family. This time, though, God acted sooner and partnered with humans to stop the Nephilim. The conquest was God's alternative to sending another flood. It was almost a prevention. If the conquest never happened, it's possible the world would have become like it was right before the flood.
There is a kind of thread that I find that I don't think is that plausible. I think is more exaggeration. And that's, I believe, in the Enoch tradition. In the Book of Enoch, I think there are examples of giants that are hundreds of feet tall. And I don't know that I necessarily would go that far.
Some people really struggle with this weird giant interpretation because it so closely resembles other mythology. But look at it this way. It's only weird if the spiritual realm doesn't exist. The only prerequisites for this conclusion to have a logical path are God, a spiritual reality, and angels. And those are all cornerstone claims of the Bible.
So we can see a pretty direct correlation to time from the flood to size of giant when we compare Goliath's size, whichever interpretation you take, to Og's size, which presumably is the size of his bed, which is 14 feet long and 6 feet wide, and it's all for him. And one of the reasons that I think that that's actually a good measure for Og's actual size was because another interpretation for bed, or another translation for bed, could be sarcophagus or coffin.
Yeah.
So it very well could be talking about the coffin that Og was laid in, and you wouldn't need to make a coffin any bigger than the person that's being laid in it. So in the generations between Og, who is the last of the Rephaim east of the Jordan, all the way down to Goliath, we have a clear reduction in size from something like 25 feet down to 10 feet.
The question that tugs at our thoughts is, are giants still a presence in our world today?
Could giants be alive somewhere today? Is that possible? And if so, how have we not found them?
In various cultures throughout history, tales of giants have captured the imagination, weaving narratives of towering beings with extraordinary physical attributes. While such accounts are often relegated to the realms of myth and folklore, some have speculated about the potential existence of modern-day giants. Yet, amidst the skepticism, there remains an enduring fascination with the prospect of encountering beings of extraordinary stature, prompting us to ponder the mysteries that lie beyond the confines of what we know.
When the U.S. was just beginning its war in Iraq, there was a huge presence in the city of Kandahar. And one of the stories is that there was a patrol team sent out into the mountains surrounding Kandahar to see if they could scout anything, any good positions or something. And they never came back. And they went radio silent for too long. And so they sent a special forces unit to try and find this patrol of men. And the special forces unit spent days hiking through the mountains of Kandahar. And finally, in front of this cave, the mouth of this big cave, they saw a lot of the gear from these patrol officers laying around on the rocks. And as they were kind of coming to terms with what they were seeing,
So we are coming down a mountainside, and it was nice. A nice goat path. We bent around this corner, and you could see this opening of a cave. There was a cave. And then I see there's a lot of rocks, which is another artery and then bone matter. I'm not close enough to identify what kind of bones, but I did see something that I knew was a piece of our communication equipment. So instantly, we're thinking, ambush, maybe an animal. It could be anything. But there was enough room that we actually got into a descent dispersal in case of an ambush.
According to the stories whispered among soldiers, the encounter was sudden and unexpected. Amidst the rugged rocks and dusty plains, they came face to face with a being of immense stature towering over them like a titan of old. With fiery red hair cascading down its massive frame and 6 fingers adorning each hand, it seemed to defy the very laws of nature.
It was a man of at least 12 to 15 feet. This is a monster. Red beard, and its hair was long past the shoulders, a scarlet red hair, and then runs at us. So now our training kicks in. Muscle memory, complete muscle memory. While Dan is moving at him, another bro of mine starts laying fire. And then I start firing. He skewers Dan. He now has him on this pipe. It went through him. He's still got him, and he's coming after more. We all just clicked in. I don't know what it was, but I remember we were all like, shoot him in the face. Now our weapons components were M4s, we had 308s, and we had Barrett 50s. This is sounding longer than it took. We're talking 30 seconds, and he's taking multiple hits, and is still moving.
So they radioed to their local headquarters, and they asked him to send a Chinook. The Chinook came, grabbed this giant, carried him away. The men never saw it again, and they had to sign non-disclosure agreements.
Do we know whether this story is made up out of whole cloth, maybe some amalgamation of other stories, or is it just entirely true? We can't know. We just don't know. We're not in a position to. But these kind of stories continue today, and there are people who claim to continue to have interactions with, I think, even giants today. So, listener, you be the judge at the end of the day. What do you think?
If you're a giant,
let us know in the comment.
Whatever interpretation you settle on, just consider this. The writer was trying to tell you something. He didn't write this to entertain us. It seems God was trying to tell us about the drastic lengths that evil, Satan-fallen angels were willing to go to keep us from joining God's family. So I say, embrace the weird when it makes sense.